Hello and welcome to another installment of Liberty Nation's Swamponomics videocast. I'm Andrew Moran, Allen's economics correspondent. Each week, I dive into the morass of top economic news stories and fish out compelling narratives, or I retrieve fallacies that have been accepted as conventional wisdom by the swamp creatures for years. This week, Superman is dominating the box office, the Oakland Athletics are dominating baseball, and bell-bottoms are dominating the fashion of the day. It's the 1970s. For only the third time in the last 50 years, the US economy is going through a commodities supercycle. This is an economic trend that sees everyday commodities from oil to soybeans to silver grow through year-long gains amid structural adjustments in demand. In this case, the entire world is demanding commodities at the exact same time, applying pressure on both production and inventories. Over the last several months, there have been many developments to support commodity prices, including ultra-aggressive and ultra-loose monetary policy from central banks, surging Chinese demand, and crop failures. As a result, many of the leading financial institutions are calling this a, quote, commodity supercycle that is reminiscent of the 1970s and early 2000s. But some believe today's conditions are more similar to the 70s amid economic stagnation, a democratic administration, and the US being engaged in a geopolitical conflict with China rather than the Soviet Union. The question remains, will Joe Biden be as ineffective as Jimmy Carter? That said, everything is going up. US crude oil prices recently surpassed $60 for the first time in more than a year. Natural gas prices topped $3. Soybeans, corn, and wheat supplies have soared to 8-year highs. Copper hit a 9-year peak. And platinum and palladium prices have been testing record highs in recent sessions. But while this might be positive news for investors, it's devastating for consumers who will be paying more at the pump and at the supermarket. Gasoline prices have soared 10% over the last week, while something like lean hog spiked 15% in the last few trading sessions, testing around $1 a pound. For farmers who raise cattle, poultry, and hogs, it's becoming more expensive to farm and produce because of how expensive corn and soybean feed is. This has many of the leading food producers to raise prices on suppliers and consumers to make up for the higher overhead. As more Americans get vaccinated, traveling at home and abroad will become more prevalent. This will increase demand for gasoline, creating upward pressure on prices. Ultimately, everything will become more expensive. The missing piece in the 1970s puzzle is if shortages will be rampant. While long lines outside of gasoline stations in the 1970s became iconic photographs, it likely will not happen again in the United States because of how much energy the US possesses now. JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs also alluded to something interesting. The transition to green energy could also be fueling this commodity supercycle, particularly in the industrial metal sphere. Analysts explained in the research notes and interviews with the business media that the boom in metals could also be a result of, quote, unintended consequences in the fight against climate change since they are necessary to construct renewable energy, infrastructure, batteries, and electric vehicles. Overall, there are many signals that inflation is unfolding. For example, the Purchasing Managers Index PMI reports are highlighting sharp increases in the rate of input cost inflation. These are at multi-year highs. Put simply, life is about to become really expensive. But Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell cannot seem to figure out that an inflation bomb is about to go off, insisting that there is no evidence that price inflation is around the corner. Some of his colleagues have warned that inflation is likely to take hold in the United States sometime this year, urging Americans to, quote, get used to it. And Americans may have no other alternative but to get used to it. But will households be able to protect themselves from a depreciating currency and a soaring cost of living? While it would be prudent to invest in gold, Bitcoin, and stocks to not fall victim to inflation, not every US household has the means and can afford to become investors nowadays after the government destroyed their livelihoods, shut down businesses, and decimated their mental health during the coronavirus pandemic. How appropriate is this statement from the late great Carl Sagan? One of the saddest lessons of history is this: if we've been bamboozled long enough, we tend to reject any evidence of the bamboozle. We're no longer interested in finding out the truth. The bamboozle has captured us. It's simply too painful to acknowledge, even to ourselves, that we've been taken. Once you give a charlatan power over you, you almost never get it back. Simply put, how evil is government? That's it for me this week. Please read my full Swamponomics column, where I discuss the latest PMI numbers, the US Central Bank, and, surprisingly, Venezuela gradually ditching socialism. Thank you.
Go deeper on the topic discussed in this video, head on over to one of these links here or go to our Liberty Nation Roku channel. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for Liberty.